Today I'd like to show you how to edit a macro. Specifically, I'd like to show you how you can edit an existing macro. So we're not going to talk about how to create a macro from scratch. The idea is that if you already have one and you want to go in and make some few changes or enhancements, this is how you can do that. So here I have an empty project, and one of the macros that we use for our Python videos on our main Socratica channel is something called code background. You drag and drop that into your timeline, and what it does is it displays one dark color of blue on top of a light color, and you can adjust the width of the dark color blue. This provides a nice background for the code samples that we discuss, and it has these light blue margins. Now, it has a single control, and that is the X size, or the width of the top dark blue background layer. Let's say we wanted to make a change to this to where you could change the colors that you want. Maybe we would like to use this in a different series, or maybe other people would like to use this for their own projects. How would we do that? Your instinct might be to come over to the Fusion tab, and you can see there's the code background tool, and there's the single control that we have, the X size, or the width of this top layer. If you right click on this, you will see there's something called Edit Controls, but this is more for adding a new control to an existing tool, not so much for editing the control interface that already is there. By that I mean, for example, if you were to add, let's say, a very complicated node, the delta keyer, it has page after page of controls that you can use to change this behavior. But if you right click, go to Edit Controls, none of those are there. This is more for if you want to add a new user control or to add a new control to an existing page. Another thing you might try, in fact this is the first thing I tried, is you might come to the setting file for your tool or for your macro. If you drag and drop it in, it looks the same as the tool that appeared here from adding it on the edit or cut page. So here when I drag and drop the macro in, it appeared as a single tool, code background with a single control. When you drag and drop the setting file in, the same thing happens. There's a single node and the single control. There's no way to kind of unpack this to be able to see all the different nodes that went into creating this macro. Now, if you mouse over it, you'll see in the pop-up the name of the node, code background. In this case, it added an _1, but it shows it contains 4 tools: transform, dark blue, merge, and light blue. But how do you access those nodes to be able to make changes? Currently, in this interface on version 18.15, I don't know how to do that. But let me show you the trick that I use. Let's come to a file editor. I use Visual Studio Code, but any text editor will work. At the top of your macro setting file, there will be a line that has the name of the macro, in this case, code background, and then it will have equals macro operator. Here's what you do. If you change macro operator so that it reads as group operator and save that, then if you come back to Fusion, drag and drop the setting file into Fusion, now what you have is a group of nodes instead of just a macro which kind of hides the inner details of this tool. Now if you right click on this, you can come up and do Ungroup, and there you can see all the nodes that we used to make this. Now what I would like to do is let's come over to the edit page and let's just delete this, come back to Fusion, make sure everything's gone. It is. Now let me drag and drop the file over. The reason I cleared everything is I want to have the original names for all the tools. Let me get rid of media out. Let's select this, right click, and ungroup. Now it's the original macro names for all the nodes: dark blue, transform, merge, etc. When I had 2 of the same node on my Fusion node editor at the same time, Fusion will append _1, _2, etc., depending on how many copies of that you have. I don't want that. I want to start clean. That way I have the original names and I don't have to worry about going in and renaming them. Now all you want to do is select the nodes, right click, and say create macro. Or alternatively, if you want to add new nodes and new effects and things like that, this is the place to do it. Here you could go in and start adding any additional nodes that you want to add to your macro. But once you have all the nodes connected and working the way you want, you can now go in and save it again. Select all the nodes, right click, come up to macro, and select create macro. Now this is the pop-up screen where you get to decide what the name of it is and also which controls will be available for users. Right now, you can tell which nodes have a control that will be bundled up with a macro because it will be highlighted red. Right now, we only have a single one, output. Let's go back and make sure that you can control the X size or the width of the dark blue layer. So we're going to come up to dark blue and say we would like to be able to control the width of it. Actually, now that I look at this, I realize that's not the control I exported. I exported the full HD dark blue background, but it was in the transform node where I changed the X size or the width when it layered one on top of the other. Or this was before the merge. So we're going to continue what we did before, is we're going to export the X size. But now let's say we wanted to give people the ability to change the color. We'll come to dark blue, and here we're looking for the color, and there it is. It's on the color page. These subfolders, if you will, are the different page of controls you have for each node. We want to export the color for the dark blue node and the color for the light blue node. Now, both of these controls are named color. Let's see if we can rename this. So right now the dark blue is the foreground. So let's say this will be the top layer color. Okay. And let's come to the light blue. Instead of calling it just plain color, let's call this background color. Okay. So there we now will have 4 controls that are included. The output you won't actually see. You don't need to worry about that. But you do need to include an output in each macro. So when we click control, it asks if we'd like to save it. Let's click yes. We're going to simply overwrite the code background.setting file. Click save. It'll ask if we really want to replace it, and we do. So hit yes, and there we go. Now let's clear everything, and let's drag and drop this in and see if it works the way it should. I'm going to drag and drop the code background tool in, and there we go. We have the, first of all, let's display it. And we only need a single display. So there is the control for the X size. Now we have 2 colors that we exported here. And it did not include, let's see, top layer color, and there's red, and the background color, and also red. So this is a bit of a problem. We want to be able to control the color entirely. And this was a bit of a mistake on my part. So let's delete this. And we'll go back and do this again. In a way, this accident was fortuitous because it will allow us to repeat the process one more time a little more quickly. Here's the file. Notice because once we overwrote it, it changed group operator back to macro operator. So now you have to open the setting file, which I already have, rename this to group operator, come back to Fusion, drag and drop the file in, and then we're going to ungroup. There we go. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but when I drag and dropped it in, it listed it as macro 1. That's because when I exported it as a macro, I did not change the name, but I did overwrite the file. So we can fix 2 things at once here. So let's ungroup this. And now what we're going to do is we're going to export this one more time. The only thing we want to change is just the control interface. We don't want to actually change the nodes. But if this was your macro and you wanted to add new features, this would once again be the place where you add those nodes. Select them all, right click, go up to macro and create macro. I forgot to list the macro name, so let me do that now. Let's call this code background. That will be the label that appears when you drag and drop it into Fusion. What do we want to export? We want to export the output just as we did before. Under transform, we want to export the X size. And instead of calling it X size, let's just call it width, because I think that's a more user-friendly description of what you're changing instead of X size. Dark blue, we want to export the color, but we also want to be able to change the green, blue, and alpha. Before we just hit the color, and if you come over here and look, it said top left red. So really all we did was export the ability to change the red. And I'm going to rename this one to, this is the dark blue, which is the foreground color. I'm not going to rename the green, blue, and alpha. Color seems to be an odd one because the 4 RGB alpha, the 4 channels you have, RGB and alpha, are kind of bundled together into a single control. with that little color picker at the top. But let's not be distracted. Let's come over to the light blue, come to the color page, and we want to export the color controls, and we will name this one background color. So we now have all the controls that we want to export. We've given the macro a name, which will appear here, and we've also renamed the controls to something a little more helpful. Click close. Yes, we want to save it. And like before, we're going to click on the same file, the code background setting file, and click save. Do we want to replace it? Yes, we do. Now, let's see if everything worked out the way we want it to. We're going to delete everything, and then we're going to drag and drop the setting file in. There we go. Now we once again have it's a macro operator instead of a group operator because we can't ungroup it anymore. It's now just a single node. If we display it, and then also if you mouse over this, you will see what tools it contains. And if we come up here, we can see there's red, green, blue, and alpha, but also the color controls we renamed as foreground color and background color. And the width of the top layer, we renamed that to width. So now let's see, does it work? Yes, the width control works just fine. Can we change the foreground color? We now can, and we can even make it a little bit transparent if we wanted to, although that's not working the way I would have guessed. And then what about the background color? Yes, we can change that as well. And if you double click the color, it does go back to the default. So this is the process you can use when you want to start making a lot of changes and enhancements to an existing macro. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the future.